tell me when you're ready. Thanks so much for letting us interview you, Spencer. I really appreciate it. We always start with just like kind of a, your name and where you're from and
Okay.
your profession.
Okay, my name is Spencer Grendahl, and I guess I can tell you that I was born in Idaho. I'm a war baby. My father was fought in Germany. I was educated at Whitworth College in Spokane, Washington. We lived in Spokane after we left Moscow, Idaho. And then I was educated. From there I went to Woodrow Wilson Fellowship, and I went to Brown. I took a master's degree at Brown. Then I went into the Peace Corps, and I spent 18 months in Nigeria. And during those 18 months there was a civil war, and we were eventually evacuated because of the Biafran War, which means I saw a lot of stuff like Rwanda, a lot of tribal conflict, a lot of, not a lot of killing, but enough to make you very, very sick, and enough also to realize that the war got closer and closer to my school. And there was, anyway, it was a very disturbing adventure into seeing war. I went into the Peace Corps and saw war. So that was a very disturbing situation, and I came out of that very upset. So I then, as happened in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, I decided I was a rebel, but I went into education. So I went into Harvard, and I got a master's degree at Harvard in education. And then I was hired by the Bellevue school system to be a curriculum developer, and they were involved in revamping the curriculum for the Bellevue school system, which had 4 high schools and some 7 middle schools and that kind of thing. There I had the good or bad misfortune of having a novel eventually be published, and so with that I moved down here thinking that this was going to be the beginning of a long and successful writing career. And so I became a substitute teacher in the Los Angeles junior and community college system, and I continued to write, and I became a freelancer. And it was during this, then I wrote for different magazines, but it was very hard. It was very hard. They don't pay you very much to be a substitute teacher. You don't get any health insurance. And being a freelancer, you can write and then get kill fees. So that's how I got involved with the New Age, where I could make money, was that a woman named Tamara Rand had come to town, and she was a beautiful psychic. And she had a guy who was with her, who was her manager, and they opened up a Psychic Institute on La Cienega in a building that now houses a French restaurant. So it was there that she had psychic fairs, and she had 4 rooms where psychics that she thought were good would then do readings during the week, but on the weekends there'd be these psychic fairs. And I found that that is where a gift that had been given to me by one of my girlfriend's grandmothers, she taught me how to read palmistry, which I used basically as a seductive method in college and wherever I was. It was a good way to meet people and to whatever. It's amazing the power of palmistry. We were in Berlin 3 years ago, my best friend and I, and he made the mistake of telling people I was a palmist at this museum. So of course this one woman begs for a palmistry reading. So I went out in this little garden and said, "Oh, I'm only going to read you." By the time I got done with her, there was a line of people. And that's how it is at the Tamara Rand Institute. There were a lot of people then. It was a very fresh idea. I think it was sometime around 1976, 1977, right in that era of time. Might even been 78. But so then I realized, and I learned that you could make a living going to psychic fairs and coming into this office and giving readings and splitting the money with her. So she had a percentage off of all of these psychic fairs. She had a percentage of all the people that were working for readers that were always going on. Then she gave private readings and public performances, and basically became very well known in the community for quite a while. And so that's how I got started in the business side of the New Age movement, which is, you know, you want to eat. Eating is kind of important to our biological system. So with that, I wasn't any longer dependent upon either this LA school system, although I went back to teaching. I did teach another interval here for about 6 years, but that was basically how I got into it, and it was a very interesting life, because then I got involved with another guy who was not the Tamara Rand, because she ended up going down to the Golden Door and getting involved down there, and then mysteriously disappeared. She married a very rich Italian who had rather strange connections, you know. I don't know if he was one of these guys or not, but he definitely created a rumor about whether or not she survived down there, and I don't know, but the two rumors are that she's off living somewhere. The other is that she knew too much about the mafia from being down in San Diego in this particular cluster, I guess. I have no idea, except I do know this, that I was contacted by a private detective who was trying to find her. And because I had done readings in her institute, and I had known her pretty well until she went down to I guess La Jolla, is that it? We're all, yeah, that's that's kind of like the Bel Air area down there, isn't it? La Jolla, where they have the racetrack. So she. Two versions are she's out in the desert dead somewhere for mafia secrets, and the other is that she went off and agreed to live somewhere in hibernation. I have no idea what happened to her. But she was quite a character. Then the next character I got involved with, he ran psychic fairs at this time were still very new, and we used to go from Phoenix to San Diego, where did we go in this? Orange County, Anaheim. Then we came up and did LA, Santa Barbara. Then we went up to just south of San Jose, and we ended up in San Francisco. And we would do that circuit, and it was a very fun time in my life to be on the road like that and to see all these different places. And we got arrested 4 times, and
for what?
well, I'll tell you. One of them, we were south of Berkeley, some little dinky town where, what was his name? It's been so long. Anyway, our fearless leader was there, and we were all getting ready to have this psychic fair. You know, and we were all there for a little table set up, a little announcement of what we did. You know, I mean, are you familiar with how psychic fairs work?
We've only been to one. We just recently went to the Conscious Life Expo.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, then you've seen the readers set up there, the readers that were giving readings. Mm-hmm. Well, we were set up like that, and probably not quite as elaborate as that, but still basically, and this Christian guy comes in and he holds this Bible up and it's open like this, and he's like this, he's screaming at us that we're devil worshippers and everything, and then in comes the sheriff and announces that we're all under arrest for being fortune tellers, and that's against the statutes in the state of California. Well, that was eventually changed, but the gypsies came in, you know, one of the few times you say, bless the gypsies, and they sued for right of religion and freedom of speech that you can do, especially when you figure what all else goes on in this country. I mean, all the stockbrokers and people that lied about everything. I mean, you know, we have this problem right now in the economy because people lied about where the future was going in terms of this new business that they have, all these new securities. They had invented these funny little mortgages, and then they lied to get people onto them, and they all had to. So anyway, the gypsies won that. But at this particular time, they came in and they were going to cart us all off in this paddy wagon, but our fearless leader had a lawyer who appeared and saved us from that time. There was a time down further, right outside of not Santa Cruz, but what's the next little town? Carmel. In between Carmel and Santa Cruz, there's a little place, and we actually had to go in and get booked, and then we got out. But that was a time it was very interesting, you know. And there was the astrologers all been together and got a thing called AFAM. AFAM, and we all raised money, so any astrologer got thrown in jail for fortune telling, that we would bail them out.
Oh, they were getting thrown in jail for?
Yes, oh yes, and it still occasionally it happens. But the California law was changed because of the gypsies, and they, as much as I question some of their ethics in terms of their fortune telling, you know, I'm sure you'll hear very different stories from different people who've had contact with gypsies. And my advice is to be very careful about what you say about gypsies. They're a very strong group of people, and they have a very fervent desire to protect anyone from saying, you know, things that, you know, gypsies have a whole group of tricks and things, all of which one might argue is not without foundation, you know. But I made the mistake of really going into elaborate discussion of the gypsies, for which I received, you know, threats. And so you must be very cautious, I think, about gypsies. And on the other hand, gypsies were the ones that paved the way for everyone there was another way you got around, but everyone became a minister, and we all had to send away for these little paper ministry things. So I was a preacher for this, what was it? The I don't know, the Church of the One Mind or the One Consciousness or something. You know, that was back in the early '80s. That was quite a time. It was kind of interesting.
Sorry, can I interrupt for 1 second? Could we just kill that? I know it's going to make you really hot if we leave that on over the course of the interview. And
Really? Is it?
It's not bothering me yet.
Yeah,
Is it just the sweat?
Yeah, I can tell your brow's just getting a little...
Oh, okay.
And we should turn it off because it's going to be a long...
It's not going to match with this. It's not the shampoo.
It's fine.
All right.
I know it's going to get really hot over time. Sorry about that, guys.
So anyway, that's... you know, then from time to time I would have luck. I published a couple of books on, I wrote a book on palmistry that got published, and it got published, you know, it got translated into French and Italian, and for a while that was very exciting. And I wrote a book on astrology. Now they're all out of print. I had one movie that was made, and that was kind of by accident, but you know, I actually wrote a movie that got produced. My agent at that time called me up and said, "Spencer, do you want to write a kung fu movie?" I'll write anything. Just show me the check, you know. And that movie did get made. It was called Street Soldiers. And so I've achieved all the great things in my life. I always said, people do this, if I only could publish a novel, just one little old novel, I would be happy the rest of my life. And I'm sure you guys are thinking, oh, if we could just have one great movie, you know, and it'd be distributed. And so then that happened, and then I thought, well, if I can just write a book on palmistry and astrology, I'd be very happy. And so then it was, if I could only, you know, write a movie. So I had my experience, and you know, I was at the Directors Guild, watching my name. In fact, there it is up there. Street Soldiers is the Street Soldiers is the movie that I wrote, and then of course the director, you know, jumped in and got half of the credit for the writing because he ruined it. But on the other hand, you know, he was the director. What can you do? But I got to sit there, and I had that experience that a lot of people will never have, who run around town with tons of scripts, that I really got to sit there and see my name and watch it go, and then watch immediately go into the DVD business and go basically into the Eastern market. And I don't know if you can find it now. I have copies of it. But so I had a very interesting life. I've seen a lot, and now that I'm 66, I'm kind of kicked back, laid back, and resting. I became very interested in death, so for 9 years I was a hospice volunteer. And I've seen lots of people pass over, and that really helped me because, you know, there's always this what goes on there. And I remember when we were first doing in training, we were going to go and see some videos of people dying, and people, oh, I don't know if I can watch the video. Oh God, someone's going to really die. And then we had to go. Well, I ended up at the VA. I started out at the VA, and they kind of have these little death chambers over at the VA. They have 2 or 3 buildings which are just full of people who have terminal illness. And at that time, with the group I was with at that time, I had a floor, and there were various of us who go to that floor and meet all these guys. And so I got to see a lot of people pass. And then I got involved with Cedars because I kind of got tired of going to just a floor full of these people, and I'd like to see what goes on in people's homes and also see kind of a different group of people. So at Cedar I went to people's homes, and you did all kinds of things, like just basically sit with them and talk with them, or you know, give the caretaker time to go to the bank, and, you know, like 2 or 3 hour break for him, and I do that twice a week. So that was very interesting because, you know, having seen lots of people die, you also saw lots of different ways that people chose to die. And that's why I'm very glad the state of Washington, the state of Oregon have this right to choose how you pass over, and the right to choose, you know, what you're doing with your life. That also helped my New Age thing, because then I really could see that people who had a strong religious faith, one way or the other, whether it was New Age or whatever, well, some of them are really afraid to die even though they had Christian faith, but basically, there's what we call a good death and a hard death. And an easy death is one where the people really they're accepted it, and they know what's going on. Sometimes they even have visions of where they're going. You know, you don't know if that's the morphine drip getting out of control, or if they're not on that, what's causing it. Other people are terrified of it, and they resist it, and they hold on. And then a couple of people I know who've actually hastened their own, you know, they have gotten involved with various methods of taking pills or whatever. So that was really interesting, and I really am glad I had that experience, because that has really helped me think about the ending of life, because I really don't want to live longer than when I'm independent. I don't want to be in a walker. I don't want to do that stuff. So in fact, I have 3 or 4 guys. I love them. I love the way. This one guy was a dentist, and wonderful guy. In fact, he was 80 years old when no, he was 90 when I got him. But if he was 80, he hooked up with a young chick of 70 after his wife of 50 years died. And then for another 10 years, from 80 to 90, he had this young 70, you know, she was always 10 years younger. Right. And so anyway, and he was kind of, because when we went in trance, he would be waving this right arm around, and his girlfriend says, you know, that's what he'd be doing, drilling people. So he was always, and yet he had such a good attitude about it. And another guy, a veteran, I know, this guy was a forward observer for the artillery, and he would tell stories that would make him cry. About one time he was in the Korean War, and he was, you know, they dumped these forward, you know, they were the ones that direct the fire over the DMC, and of course, so every side's trying to kill off the other side's forward observers, because that's what's making the artillery come in. And one time they were dropping them off in this tank, and the tank got ran into a mine, and there were only 2 guys that survived this tank, you know, and they got out of there and they hid, and the Koreans came and ran around the tank, and then they thought, well, now we're just going to die, you know, because sooner, you know, they were all shook up, had, you know, and so it became night again, and here came a little group of Americans, and they found those guys.
Did you notice a difference between the people that were spiritual and not spiritual, how they dealt with their life? Well,
let's put it this way. I think the people who were really spiritual had a pretty easy time of it. Now, here's the thing. Some of the people who had a feeling that there was a judgment at the end, and they really were afraid of judgment, and even if they thought that they had done some kind of acceptance of Christianity, they were kind of judgment, you know. And other people, quite frankly, can't give up consciousness, and whatever, you know. I have a very good friend who I know, have no doubt, that was very religious, but she held on to the bitter end, and she had been an advocate of what they call hastening your death, which means when you reach a certain point, that's when you save up your pills and you pick a time and have a ritual and eat your pills and your friends are all there, and then you kind of slip into unconsciousness, and then, you know, a few hours you're dead. Well, she went to India. This is very interesting to her. She went to India, and she was a Vedic astrologer, a fantastically good Vedic astrologer. I mean, I sat at her feet in Vedic astrology. The astrology is divided into Vedic or sidereal or Eastern or Hindu astrology, and Western, which is completely on another level of astrology. It's formed by the Greeks and geocentric. Anyway, she went to India, took this thing with this huge, very well-known Indian astrologer. Actually, this guy went, you know, and she was sitting at his feet, you know, kind of worshiping him. And, you know, he's not worshiping, but you know what I mean. You have a professor in college or probably film school. Some guy he really knows how to shoot a movie. Let's go worship him. So anyway, she goes there, and this time's got breast cancer that's kind of gone all over her body, and it's obvious that sooner or later it's going to get her, because it's gone into sections that even though they have very new chemos and very new things, she's kind of at the last wave of not getting these things. She's always applying for these things and getting into certain programs, but not in ultimate programs, you know, like where they grow stem cells and develop an immune system and put it back. She was right in that process when she didn't qualify for the protocol. But anyway, about 8 months before that, 10 months before that, she still was wondering. She went to India and sat at the feet of this guy. She says, "Why do I have this karma? I have had so much pain in my life, you know, I mean, blah, blah, blah." And this had happened and that had happened, and the men that I really loved I never married, and the men that I kind of thought I loved and then married and really didn't love me. Why is my life this way? And now I've got cancer. What gives here? And this guy looks at her and says, "In your past life you killed the sacred snake. And you have to live your life out to the very end to fulfill this karma. If you hasten your death, you're going to have to repeat this kind of a format in your life." And now this is one PhD from Berkeley, a PhD from Berkeley in genetics. Okay, I mean, smarter than this, brilliant woman. I mean, like you know, she absorbed things. 800s on her college boards, you know, scholarship to Stanford, scholarship to Berkeley. Now she's sitting there dying, and she's not going to hasten anything. And I'm saying, Liz, for God's sake, how much more pain can you take? She lived it out to the very end so she would fulfill this thing about the sacred snake. Now, I don't know. I mean, on one hand, you know, the whole zodiac is made up of this, you know, the nodes of the moon, or this dragon, the tail of the dragon, the head of the dragon, and this is where the eclipses take place. So a chopped up snake or a chopped up dragon has a very big significance in terms of a myth. Now, this is a myth. So I don't know if they're all holding a snake like this, and she thinks that she hacked the snake in two, or if she's a little snot that got into the temple, and I have no idea what fantasy she had about it. But I tell you this was a woman who, until she went to India and had this revelation made to her, but from whatever reason he devised, she changed her life, and she lived a hard death. And you know, I said, Liz, you know, I've seen a lot of easy deaths. So have you. You know, because in genetic counselor, you see a lot of. She was one to counsel. Like, let's say you knew you were going to have a deformed baby, and then you'd go, "Oh my God, what could I possibly do to cause deformity in that baby? I probably had that one cigarette I had, or that one drink of wine I had, or that time, you know, we drove too close to the truck. You know, whatever." And she'd be the one, you know, that would counsel you about these things and tell you, it's okay, you know, it wasn't really you, it's, you know, it's genetics. And she could tell stories about, you know, babies born with all their heart things wrong, the baby would live for an hour or two, and the families would handle the baby and pray over the baby, or they'd be afraid of the baby, depending on the family. And here's one, all that experience in dealing with pain and trauma and trying to, you know, assure people that in one way or another, what they had done had no real relationship to why this child was going to be born this way. And then she keeps her life going for the sacred snake. And I love that woman. I still feel like she's around me at times, you know. I mean, I really do. I mean, I knew her for 20 years. She saw me through 2 marriages. I mean, I was still married to my second wife, who I love very much, but she's seen me, you know, for 20 years.
So I'm curious, is because reincarnation, you know, being born again, is it what does the New Age movement feel about hastening your death, or, you know, suicide?
Suicide's a very loaded word. It's got so many connotations. Suicide, you know, and of course, you know, other cultures like the Japanese culture, the Roman culture. You know, you know the phrase "he fell on his sword," don't you? Well, you young children, you don't know these things. Well, falling on your sword is, you know, if you get in a situation where a battle for the Romans is going too far, the general would have to fall on his sword, which means that you would take your sword and fall over, and it would puncture your diaphragm and heart. Just like Harry Carey for the Japanese during the war, they would, rather than surrender, they would kill themselves. They would. So, and then we associate suicide with people who are whacked out and crazy, and then there's a whole lot of religious consciousness that if you do that, you're going to go to hell, you're going to go to purgatory, you're going to have to work this out, God hates that. You know, God's up there with this little beard saying, oh, look at that one, committed suicide. I got a whole universe to run here, but I'm right now watching, you know, Mandy over here who's gotten so crazy that she took her life. Well, Mandy's now got to go down here to hell. Well, that's BS. So there, if you talk to it, most New Age people will talk about it as passing over. They don't use the word suicide, and they will use other terms: passing over, going beyond the veil, going into the veil, hastening their own death, choosing their own final exit. There are a lot of words, a lot of phrases that are used, and you have to realize that the New Age movement is so diversified, and it's, you know, we take this whole big area and we call it New Age, and yet there are different people within New Age who argue the other people really aren't New Age. And so it's kind of like a Baptist church, and they get all these little Baptists running around. There are 28,000 different, you know, Baptist denominations, and we dunk and we do this and we do that, and you know, if you look, even if you drive around, you're going to see tons of, within Christianity, tons of Episcopalians and Presbyterians and Methodists and Seventh-day Adventists. So it's only fitting that you realize that in a New Age movement, they're as diversified in their own cosmic consciousness. Most of them will all agree that we have a soul within us, and we're all a larger energy substance, and we're still part of God. The New Age thing is we're all God. And if you look at the concept that we have a soul, and that our, you know, I like it's like an FM station. Right now, there are thousands of people talking on cell phones here, and it's conversations are going madly around. Right now my computer and everything is picking up all these signals. So to me, the concept of thinking that you have an inner vibration that in some way cosmically is going to be tuned into the final resolution, if you take the Big Bang as this big chord, boom, and it's now gone out, we're all part of that vibration of the Big Bang. And where's the Big Bang going to go? Well, some people think it's going to go off forever and just die. That's it, thing's over. Other, like myself, think that the Big Bang and the group that we're involved with, because there could be thousands of Big Bangs other places that we will never know about, or maybe they'll even collide and we'll be in 2 Big Bang. You know. But the point of it is that if you accept that fragmentation of the one, of the zero, out into the mass, and then the concept of its coming back, as it comes back in, the frequency has to in some way finalize and come into tighter and tighter frequency. And the concept then is that within that frequency, each of us has a frequency within us. But it's possible that through constant meditation and harmonic, you can align yourself with that essential base chord of the Big Bang. And so we're now going to come back into a wholeness. The idea being that if you do that, then life is good. There's really no hell in New Age, except that when you don't know this, and then you're in the world of Maya, which is illusion, that you don't realize that we're all a harmonic from the Big Bang. We're all, well, you know, Brahma's breath. That's the Big Bang for them, and then Shiva comes along and pulls us back in and hacks all this stuff up because we're going to go back to Brahman's breath. So that's what to me is the essence of what most New Age people that I know of, even though they'll argue about everything about it, they all essentially look at death as passing onto the other side. And there are thousands of stories where or not you go there and there's some bigger cosmic book of you've got to do this because you did that, you've got to do all these things to make up for what you've done here in this particular vibration. I mean, the Earth is, we're still one big vibration here of the carbon chain. I mean, the carbon chain is what makes us breathe. So we're all carbon change frequencies.
So they don't. What do they feel about non-believers who don't believe in that energy?
Sad, just sad.
Just sad. They just feel sorry for them. It's not like they feel like they're going somewhere bad or anything like that.
Well,
Are there ramifications?
they do. They have created the atomic bomb. I mean, that's kind of bad, I think. And we do have people still creating, like, we have the Guantanamo Bay, we have torture, we have. I saw in Nigeria people killing each other with hatchets, and throwing their body into the Benue River, and crocodiles coming up, and, granted they didn't kill on the scale, well, they did in the South, they killed on a huge scale, but where I was, a couple hundred people, not so bad, but you have no idea how strong, if you just throw these bodies in the river, what the stench is. People don't realize that when you have a big battle like that, the thing that comes after the battle is this enormous, terrible stink. And in fact, I went to Harvard. I get this Harvard magazine, and somebody wrote a PhD thesis, and then they had a little article about it, about cleaning up the battles of the American Civil War. You know how bad the Gettysburg smelled. So we're talking here about a group of people that we've had all of this terrible stuff going on here, with Darfur. How do you define this stuff? Well, at one level, New Age people are, that's terrible. We should have some charities. We should do something about this. We should pray about this. We should do something about it. And it's really bad. I don't know if you should really call it evil. I do think a negative frequency would be a good way to look at it. And I do think that there are, for one reason or another, we have viruses that attack our computer. For some reason or another, some idiot gets in his head, I'm going to create a virus and then screw up everyone's computer. I think you have to take into the Kabbalah is very specific that God created this negative polarity for a reason, and the part of it's all part of the whole. You have to accept the fact if you have a big out thing come in, there's going to be chaos for a while. If you look at what a dark hole does, and it crunches all this stuff down. Well, you think everyone's happy when that dark hole starts crunching all that energy? I don't know. My feeling is when you get to the other side, all of this looks pretty silly. When you have it and you look at it, it's like looking at an old TV show or something. Like, what on earth were they doing there? So that's what I think. I don't know. You'll get a lot of different opinions, and you'll get people that have very structured ideas on how reincarnation works specifically. And if you go to India, very, very, they'll, in fact, if you have too many sons, you might have to repeat your life for being so lucky. You shouldn't be this lucky. You see, like, what where does that put femininity in India? Well, I'll tell you where it is. It's 7 feet behind the guys who walks around. That's where they are. And we want sons, and, you have no, I feel so blessed that I'm in this country where we have the right to even have a new age. You really would be like if you were in a country that had a state religion, like, la, la, I lived in Morocco for a while, and even in Nigeria, northern Nigeria, they have a strong autocratic government that also was a religion. I don't think people realize exactly how lucky we are. You have to go outside the United States to come back and realize how lucky we are that we can even get a lawyer when we get picked up, or we even assume it's. I was in France in 1968, and there were these big riots, and I had a terrible experience with them, with the French police. And you really, realize it. You know, like, and I was at Harvard for the Harvard strike, and we all got beat up by the police. But still, there was a point in time where sooner or later, you got a lawyer. Sooner or later, some process happened where you got to stand up and say, well, I had a certain right to be I had a certain right of expression here. So if you look throughout the New Age movement, you're going to see a lot of different thoughts about this. And you've just heard what I think about it. And other people I think, no, Spencer is really kind of wrong. We have to go to this place. We have all the karmic codes written down, and you have to go to this what do they call it? It's skipping my mind, but it's a book. This Kasha Records. That's when you go to the Kasha Records, and then by the Kasha Records, I don't know. I'm sticking to my story about frequency. I believe we're all frequencies, and that the people who are bad are static. They're like frequency that hasn't really found its harmonic yet. And you can see, like, when an orchestra starts tuning up, then they're all nyeh, 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 nyeh. But yet when the conductor goes, now they're an orchestra. But warming up, you go, what on earth is going on? I think it's that way here. In fact, some of the New Age music that I have, a couple of them start out with the concept of, you start off, you go, you're hurting my head, with this music, and then they find harmony. So their theory is too that there's a negative frequency that's out there, and it's just creating static, and it doesn't make it any easier for the person that's in pain, I don't think. I mean, everybody has a story,
So, how did you find this? Like, how did your background get you into palmistry? Like, you mentioned that your girlfriend's mother gave you a gift.
Her grandmother.
Her grandmother.
Grandmother Harris. Yeah.
Was there something leading up to that though? Were your parents?
No. My dad's Jewish. My mother was a Swedish woman, and and my mother is. When the war came, my mother wanted to go be with her family, and my father went off to the war. So my grandfather, on my mother's side, had an orchard, and it was a carpenter. I still have some acreage that family owns in Lewiston, Idaho. So they all went to the orchard. They all went to the orchard, and they all lived on this little farm with growing all these apples and spuds and stuff. And he also worked as a carpenter when things were growing, and it was. So that's and my father was probably my grandfather was a semi-practicing Jew, but my father wasn't at all. Kind of thought the world was run by evil Masons, and I'm a Mason. My grandfather was a Mason. It's kind of odd. But no, it was Grandma Harris. Up to that point, I was involved in this big fight with Christianity. My father died, and so my mother tried to scrub the Jew off of me, and my younger sister, younger brother was so young they didn't know anything about my father, and they kind of resent the fact I even knew him. So then I walked in, Grandma Harris, and we walked in to meet the grandmother of the girl I was dating, and she goes like this. And that's kind of alarming. You walk in to meet some woman, and suddenly her head flops on her shoulder, and then she comes back, she says, "You've been sent to me." You go, this one, they all warned me that she was a little crazy, but she was of the old New Age. There's another New Age in California in the 20s and early 30s when there was a huge activity in this city of they just discovered, the Eastern religions. Manly Hall was here, I'm really familiar with all the Manly Hall stuff. So there were a whole group. She's part of it, and the Edward Casey people were at her, and so she didn't. She had something. She was very sick, and she'd gotten to this room, and so she'd written to Edgar Casey, so she had an appointment, and Edgar Casey lies down on his sofa and goes into a trance in Virginia. And Grandma Harris is here lying down in a doctor's office in Santa Barbara. And Edgar Casey goes, "There's a tumor they can't see. It's right, And so then they took it, and there was a tumor there. So she, that was it. That was it for her. So anyway, so she was involved in this, and she, she would say things like, "Oh, I'm so glad I lived long enough to see the ecumenical council." How can you? So anyway, and she was the one that did cards and palmistry for everyone in the family who wanted. Of course, no. So she'd do it for the neighbors. She was kind of, I mean, you'll meet people like this who are kind of like the grandma guru in the neighborhood, and so she gave me this book of palmistry by this guy Cairo, and his name, because chirology and chiromancy are really the two words for palmistry. Chiromancy is the study of the lines on your hand, and chirology is the study of finger structures and knobs and stuff like that, looking at the lengths of phalange and stuff like that. So anyway, this started a relationship that went on, even though Joan and I broke up long before Grandma Harris died. And Grandma Harris and I still communicated, still wrote letters to each other, still talked about this. Because, why should I stop seeing you? Because you're not dating we have a relationship here. And so, yeah, that's how I got started. And like I said, it was a very kind of handy kind of thing to know. I dabbled in the tarot cards at that time too, but I never really took on to the tarot as I did later. I still don't understand how that works though. The cards are really, because like palmistry, it's on your body. There's some DNA thing here. Because you look at flexure lines and the whole study of flexure lines, people think that these lines are created by, wiggling your hands. No, that's not how it works. It works that these are in some way a DNA signal. And doctors are learning that too. They're looking more and more at certain lines on the hand, a certain degeneracy of certain dermoglyphical marks that indicate certain diseases. So anyway, I got into that, and then I got into astrology, and then I got into the cards. Basically, I got into the cards because when I was with Tamara Rand, she says, "Learn the cards. Everyone loves them." It wasn't like oh, it's going to lead you to sacred knowledge. I learned the cards of sacred knowledge over at the Manly Hall Institute, over at the Philosophical Society, where I studied under a guy. What was his name? I wrote a book called The Royal Road. It's over here. I'd go get it, but interrupt the interview. So anyway, wow, the cards really have deep meaning, and the profound symbols, and the whole idea of the synchronicity of doing a card reading and then flipping these cards. When look, you were born at a certain time. You entered the cosmic universe. You entered the great vibration from the Big Bang in and out at a certain time. So the frequency of your body, which we say really that frequency becomes ignited. It's like putting the battery into the AM/FM radio or whatever you got. That happens when you take a breath. That first breath that you take is the battery going into the soul, and now the soul is activated in terms of this frequency. So I understand that. Well, and if you look at it from an astrological point of view, and you start seeing repeated ways that where you enter the cosmic dance determines how they got, people who entered the cosmic dance and went through the Great Depression, they got a much different experience of life than those of us who grew up after World War II and suddenly had, spending money. You could go buy a 45 and make Elvis or the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or Pink Floyd happy, or later groups of that. So you can't tell me that astrology in certain ways isn't really a benchmark of when you enter the universe. That's what you get, and that's a karmic beginning. I mean, your parents probably entered in a different way, and that's what they have, a different concept of money. They have a different concept of education. They have a different concept of morality. So I mean, to me, those two things, palmistry and astrology, are in some way connected to birth, when you took your first breath, or what you got. But cards, just. But I eventually accepted this concept that the cards, in some way, are symbols. And in some way, the shuffling of the deck and making sure, there are two ways that people do it. You either shuffle a deck or they say pick, and they fan the deck out. And then there's the question of how many cards you should use. But all that aside, I'm strongly convinced that somehow a frequency gets involved with the cards, because I've seen the cards be accurate enough that it bothers me that it's that accurate. But, you know, and people do, like Tamara said, people love it, you know. And, you know, they always remember you get this card, and people have a fear like the death card, which is, you know, you should welcome the death card because when you have a great change, the death card is a symbol of just fall in your life. And, you know, you're going to go through a period of foulness, and a new spring is going to happen. But it's just like Liz. Liz held out in the fall of her life until she died, just, and then she made up for the great snake that she supposedly killed. But then she went through and you'd be rebirthed. But there are times in your life, like when you graduate from high school, you went through a death, because now, hey, you're not in high school anymore. That whole group of who's a cheerleader, who's a jock, who's the big brain, who's the one in thespians, all that stuff is gone. That whole social thing that was forced on you because, everyone lives in this neighborhood is going to go to this school, get this kind of crap. All right, that's a death, because now you're in a college. So that's behind you. So really, if you look at the death card in that format, the death card then is really something, hey, the way that you're living right now, when you were a virgin, you were one person. When you're not a virgin, whoa! Then you go through a period of like, maybe, I should sleep with a lot of people. And you think, well, maybe that's not so good. Maybe I should be monogamous. So you go through these cycles of rebirthing and rebirthing yourself, and the death card really is an indication it's time to do some rebirthing. Or the rebirthing is not going to, you're not going to have a choice. Something's going to happen and force you to reconsider and regrow and redevelop yourself. And the frequency that you're in now, or the time that you're in now, has got to change. It's like a Pluto transit. That's what Pluto, when the planet Pluto moves over a point in your chart, to me it's always a time of enormous transformation. So that death card is a transformation card. But it scares people to death. That and the devil card. It's all good.
So how did the time in which you grew up, like the New Age movement, could you tell me just a little bit about how you've seen it grow and then kind of shrink, and now you feel like there's kind of it's growing again?
Yeah, I feel the New Age movement really has had its roots in the 60s. And I think it grew and then shrunk with the philosophy of the 60s, and kind of it grew and grew and grew until like the middle of the 80s, and then I think it kind of at least fell out of the spotlight of the media. I think it was still here. Until this time, at the end of the Bush administration, and now we're going into the Obama administration, I'd always had support for what I'm doing. And it wasn't, if you're good and people liked you, it wasn't that difficult to live in this nice, humble way that I live. But it's a nice life, and a good life, a life full of meditation and music. But I think two things. I think there was a growing spirituality, which you see is a cyclical thing. If you go through the history of the United States, there have been times when this mysticism always pops up. Got to have mysticism in the United States. It goes back to transcendentalism. It goes back to William Blake. It goes back into the concept of the Puritans would have these big, revivals with them. So there's an aspect of rebirthing that goes on in the spiritual world, wherever it is, and then even if you go to the Christian Science, the whole way that you can heal yourself in certain meditations, read things out loud. So I think really part of it had to do with LSD. I think part of the way that the mystical consciousness of the New Age popped everywhere was, turn on, drop, turn in, and fall out, or whatever that was. Yeah. And so I think that brought mysticism to a big front. And then at the other time, I think the popularization of the Beatles, bringing all that Eastern stuff into the mainstream of America, then suddenly, everybody had a guru. The Hare Krishnas were here. People were involved in all kinds of worrying about fate and karma and reincarnation, and all these things popped into the consciousness. And we were all in need of something, because there was a lot of people that just didn't know what to do, and suddenly hear hey, these people have been living millions of years, thousands of years. Look at India, thousands of years, and China, thousands of years of people thinking about things, religious concepts going back, predating Christianity. Let's look at that. And I think that was the beginning of the New Age movement now. Although I think if you really look at what Manly Hall and that group of people in Los Angeles, they were similarly New Age, and that they were mystics, and they were very much involved in the esoteric, and Blavatsky and all those people, and the New Dawn, William Yeats, all those people, they were all, So what I'm saying is, people are saying, when did the New Age start? Well, the New Age has always kind of been pulsing. And in the 60s, we had another big pulse. And it really got out of hand in the 80s. I mean, that's when all that stuff broke loose. And
why do you think that is in the 80s?
Well, I tell you, the great leveler of a lot of things was AIDS. For some reason, when AIDS epidemic became big, and there was this big fear about, well, there was a punishment going on for all of this thinking and all of this radical concepts about love and sex and all of that, and all these little communes where people are running around, this, as I can tell you that the 70s were an incredible time to be sexually active. The pill was now pretty much widespread. Everyone was busy around, There was a lot of God lives in eroticism, and God is a cosmic orgasm. God is good sex, and this was going on along with the New Age movement. You got to be mystical. You got to go out in the desert. You got to go out and find yourself. And oh no, you got to be like Dance Lawrence. You got to go have a good orgasm. All this is going along, and then it ran into the truck of AIDS. And everyone goes, oh God! And of course, then the Christian right says, see all these people. See all these people? They accepted all these guys. They accepted gayness. They accepted all of this stuff. They were involved in eroticism. They were involved in heretic thought. And so this big, the pendulum started swinging the other way. And that became very sad. It was very sad that we lost so many really great people. 3 great astrologers who happened to be gay died during that period of AIDS or killed themselves during that period of time. Richard Eidelman, who I think is one of the best lecturers I ever heard in my life about astrology, and was involved in discovery of the Atlantis Road in Bimini, got AIDS, and so did Jim Lewis, and many other really good astrologers who happened to be gay. But there's a whole other group of Americans where all of this isn't right. God has a system. God's up there in his beard watching, and he's right now taking his revenge. So then, and there was a lot of craziness there on the fringe. I mean, and people running around saying, I'm God, you're God. Well, to a Christian, that sounds really crazy. What is this Big Bang crap in your head? There's a very simple story here, and you're not listening to the very simple story. We have God, and he had a son. And that son's here, and then man went and killed him, and now we have to accept that, and if you look at all the history of religion, people got hung up on one little footnote, and so that was the New Age movement. Also got involved in a lot of crazy people who could be easily criticized, like. There's supposed to be this great awakening that occurred. There was supposed to be this cosmic thing in the sky. And of course, the media loves this kind of stuff. So, hey, look at this date. And it was in the 88 or something like that.
The harmonic convergence.
Yes!
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I'm curious if you were involved at all or what it was like.
Oh, yeah, I was involved in that. Yeah, I mean, everybody was. We all were out, because there was supposed to be one nodal, 18 years from that date, there was supposed to be this big nodal crisis and a new age was going to happen. Well, if you look at that, interestingly enough, 10 is 98, and then you add 8 to that, you get roughly around 2006, 2005. And so there's a whole group of people, that were thinking that somehow, when in this period of first of all, some people thought it would happen when the year 2000 came. There was a book called 55-2000. All of these things came out of the harmonic convergence. That there was going to be a shift in the pole, the magnetic north. All these things have happened, but now that the big number is now 2012, and forget that harmonic convergence. We're now in 2012, and realize that Chichen Itza, there's going to be an eclipse right over that spot, and the Mayan calendar stops, the Hopi, the Navajos, so we're having all that stuff, go poof, And so guess what? The world's going to really have a great awakening, a new cosmic order. Oh no, what's going to happen there? And I actually talked to someone on a plane. I was coming back from Costa Rica, and 2, 3, or 4. Well, I was in Costa Rica earlier last month, and the guy was talking about. I talked to. So what do you think about this 212 thing? You know, and this is a guy who made a lot of money. He'd owned a resort, and he sold it, and he was on his way back with his capital from having sold this resort, and he was wondering if some big world shift, some big crisis was going to happen. Well, this is all very interesting, and I understand what's going on with 2012, and I'm watching 2012 with interest like everyone else, just like I watched the harmonic convergence, just like I watched 5-5-2000, just like the people talk about 2005 because that was the time of the harmonic. It's all interesting. But I think the real thing is, are you really turned into your inner frequency? That's the point. Whatever's going on in the outside world, it's going to happen. I mean, you've got the lizard brain still running loose in the world. I mean, you still got people fighting each other viciously over religious. Basically, it all comes down to territory. You know, our gang are Islam, so we're going to take this area. Well, we're Christians, we're going to take this area, and the Buddhists over here. And they all own a little piece of Earth, which is like L.A. You know, don't go down where the Crips are, because the Crips will deal with you. Don't go over in an Islamic place, so. My feeling about it is that it's a very interesting point. The Kabbalah doesn't say anything about it. You can go in and study all of the Hindu concepts. They don't say anything about it. The Buddhists don't say anything about it. The Tibetans don't say anything about it. But some of these Western concepts say a lot about it. So I think we should just watch it and see what happens. And I think the big question is, why should any of this frighten you anyway? If you're really if you meditate every day, if you practice some of the principles of charitable acts, and you feel in harmony with yourself and your people, thank God we have America where you can do that. Whatever happens will happen. You know, it frustrates me is that we look at 2012, and yet we still have so many people in the United States that are hungry. We have so many kids that get beat up. We have so much going on right now that, why do you think the world's going to end there? For some people, the world's ended already. It ends when you're born in the wrong neighborhood. It ends if you're born in the wrong country. It ends everywhere. So to me, this is an aspect where I think it's a very interesting idea. But let's not lose our cynicism. People are making a lot of money running around giving lectures about 2012. There are a lot, and you're going to watch, there's going to be a lot more books come out now about 2012 and deciphering the secret codes, and it's all in mathematics. And if every third letter you put that together, look what you read. Oh my God, everything. So, look, I'm 66 years old. I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot. I've seen people killed and tossed in a river. I've watched people die at the VA. I've watched people die in their homes. I know friends that committed suicide with pills. You're not going to scare me off with some little 2012. It's just there, and I'm very curious about it. And I know some people are rabid about it. They're just like there's rabid about that as some other religious, fanatic is about the world's going to end. And there are people who are. There's a group, what's the hell her name? Claire Booth Prophet. Have you ever heard about her? She's up in Montana with all her followers, and they've stashed food and everything. They're sure the coming of Jesus. All these other Christians, Jesus is going to come and be this big welling up, and then a lot of people are going to get sick, and pretty soon the 4 horses of the apocalypse are going to come down. There are a lot of people with a lot of endings of eschatology. I mean, the eschatology, the end of it, Yeah, so we're all running around worrying about the end of the world. But let me tell you something. Sooner or later, we're all going to go back. My basic thought is we're all going to go back to another big bang. And we're all riding out of frequency now. That's how I take a look at it. And the biggest thing you can do is to try and manifest love and manifest mindfulness. I think that's basically what that's a big, tall order to do that. When people cut you off in the freeway, to be mindful is not so mindful right now, you know what I mean? In fact, I'm kind of like, curse that person. If there is a hell, he should go there, you know what I mean?
So, what was it like during the harmonic convergence, and how like you're mentioning the media wasn't so kind?
Well, the media kept playing it up.
Or, sorry, could you just mention just so we know what you're talking about, just say the harmonic convergence.
The harmonic convergence was a concept that there would be a certain constellation structure in the sky. I can't remember, but I think it made a star, a five-pointed star, and see that. And then that marked a time when then 17 years later, or pretty close to a nodal cycle, the nodes of the moon are an aspect of astrology. So this was to announce the beginning of it, and there were lots of people doing all kinds of rituals. And then people were in Sedona making, the medicine wheels, and I was part of it. We had celebrations in parks and get-togethers and large groups of speeches, and people would get together to prepare and get tuned in to this harmonic that then was going to carry us into this new growth, this new happening. So the television would be off. If people were doing some kind of a ceremony, they would be there watching it, and just like what's going on now, they'd be interviewing people who are very big advocates of this potentially new benchmark in spiritual growth in the United States. And of course, then it'd be written up in papers, and then there were books about it. Then there were, then people were debunking it. Like we were talking about the Amazing Randy when you guys were setting up. So then you had debates, there were debates on TV about, well, you guys are just a bunch of weirdos with all this mysticism and crap, and then they say, oh, but you guys, look what you've done with your world, look at what, all these smart people, look what you've created, you're smart enough, all these PhDs, we still have a world. So maybe it's time that we start marking, this is the beginning of a new spiritual age. We need a spiritual age, don't we? I mean, we need love, don't you? Do you have enough love in your life? So this kind of a dialogue, which in a way was good, but the problem of it is once again, once you get structured religion into it, then you've got Baptist ministers, priests, and other people coming out and say, this new age, this whole thing about looking at the sky, this is not the Star of Bethlehem they're looking at. So then there would be that. So it was a big spiritual debate that went on. It was very interesting, and then the prediction was for 17 years. So, after this thing happened, it kind of poofed out. It was kind of like Hands Across America. I don't know if you were around for that. There was
maybe I wasn't. I wasn't aware.
Yeah, it was another thing in the 80s. I think it was in the 80s. Who was I dating then? Yeah, I was in the 80s. Everybody in America were supposed to make one long string of hands from California all the way to New York. In fact, everywhere. Everyone's just supposed to go hold hands, and it was an amazingly successful kind of experience. A lot of people, we had hands all the way across to L.A. It was very interesting. Of course, you can't go across New Mexico very well, but people whole groups would be holding hands and being a part of this. And I remember that the girlfriend I had at the time then, she and I were down in Santa Monica, so we were part of it that started out in Santa Monica, and then was going to go across town, and people were coming in all along. It was very interesting, and it got great press, and the press followed it, and everyone was there, and it was very interesting. And that was probably another concept you could say was part of the New Age, that we need to bind ourselves together in love and a greater concept of the human family. And that also, I think, comes from Buckminster Fuller, who said we're all on space. Bucky Fuller was the first one to call it Spaceship Earth. No one thought of a spaceship Earth before. I mean, it's hard to think that we're on something that's spinning, moving through space, part of a larger group moving through space, galaxies. I mean, it becomes pretty incredible when you think about where we really are, and yet some people still feel like this little speck is a part of a cosmic drama, whether or not we're going to make it to hell or not, or heaven. So it was really an interesting time to be alive, and despite the fact that we were still under the gun from AIDS, I think the AIDS epidemic was probably the biggest crisis that I've seen in my life, other than the reoccurring slaughtering of people, which is going on. But in terms of having an impact on a whole society and a whole culture, AIDS was a leveler, and not only was a leveler because it really changed everyone's sex habits, but for the longest time, for 5 or 6 years before they got into research on it, it was considered God's judgment on gay people or anybody who got involved in weird sex or whatever. And it also stopped all of the free love that was going on. There was a lot of free love going on in the late 60s and throughout the 70s until and the band played on. I think I saw the band played on, I think 1982, and I didn't really know what they were talking about. It was in New York about all these mysterious disease and going on in the gay population. And then it got huge, you know, and my cousin died of it, Kenny, sweetest guy you'd ever meet, you know, just a love. In fact, Kenny was the first one who took me to a UFO convention. And Kenny's the kind of guy who'd talk to anybody, and we went to the UFO convention. He just was really great. And that's another aspect of the New Age. What do you do with those people out there running around having UFO experiences? I don't know.
Are there certain things that you feel more strongly about, or ones that you kind of try to distance yourself that are under the blanket of New Age?
Well, I used to be a big rock thrower. You know, I mean, I would really start saying that certain people in New Age, certain people who were channeling were really not channeling, that they were doing things for money. And I think it's very good to look at everything with a critical eye. But right now, I'm so enmeshed in, you know, my Sai Baba manifestation and my Kabbalah, and then whatever goes on with astrology and palmistry and the cards, that I really don't have a lot to say about other New Age people as much as I have to say about what's wrong with mainstream culture. I would say this, though, that always be kind of cautious about people who are telling you things under any format, whether they're just being psychic or they're channeling this stuff, so that, you know, enter my body's talking to you or saying things. I'd always be a little careful about that stuff, and also, you know, if you just cleanse your body in the right way, you wouldn't have cancer. You really wouldn't. It's all parasites in your body. I mean, all these people have all of these, and they all get into this blanket of the New Age vibrational, you know, the 7-ray theory and all of these different things. I'd be careful about them, but I think the real thing to do is to be positive. I mean, I'm very positive about the things that I like, and I really assert them. I think people should take a meditation class. I think people should do yoga or have some spiritual practice. I think people should have some way of looking at a world in which we're not involved in the drama of heaven or hell and there's a devil running around or whatever. Or, you know, because a lot of that mainstream religion, I think you would say I'm more a critique of mainstream stuff than I am of other people involved in New Age. I would say this, though. I think that people like Claire Booth Prophet and other people have got into this whole idea of waiting for the end to come because of the apocalypse. They're dangerous people, I think, you know. But as I say, I've lived a very, you know, I hope to live longer, but I mean, I've seen a lot already. So I'm pretty much at peace. I live a very simple life. I accept that. I read a lot of books. I meditate a lot. I'm very active in my community. I go to astrology meetings, and I take yoga, and I do meditation, and I play a lot of instruments. I play flute, and I go to open mics and play you know, harmonica. When I was young, folk music was just before the Beatles. You had kind of the Beach Boys and the Beatles were really taking off, but right at that end of it, in the early 60s, before the Beatles became big, there was a big thing on folk music. So I got very much involved in guitar and harmonica, and then later I got involved with meditation and the bamboo flute. So I have a lot of things that keep me busy, but I do whatever I can with charities and things like that. I just say be very careful, because there are people under the guise of some kind of New Age cosmic consciousness who really aren't really at the core doing that. They have some other agenda that you have to look at very carefully. And sometimes they themselves don't even know their hidden agenda as they fork the money into their, that's what I would think. Basically, to me, if everyone could get involved with a higher harmonic, it would be very helpful. But I've also been, there's a story about, in Obama's book, I thought was very interesting when he was living in Indonesia. And he had a different father. He had a Muslim father. I don't know. You go to a Muslim. There's a lot of beggars there all the time. You go to India, they get swamped with beggars. And so Obama has so much concern. Like he wanted to give this beggar a penny, so he gave this. Next thing you know, there are two beggars at the house wanting a penny, and his father would say, "Look, you yourself are not going to be able to pay all these people. You've got to realize that there are going to be problems here." And I think that accepting the fact that you do the best you can against a problem that's huge. I mean, the poverty in this country, when you have a guy that's ripped off charities, this Madoff character, who's ripped off Jewish charities of billions of dollars, and we have people, what do you think about this guy? What can you possibly think about him? He's the devil card. The devil card is greed. These greed heads, these people who have taken so much money, when you see the poverty of the inner city, what on earth are we talking about here except why can't we see where love should go? Why don't we see that, we don't have pennies, we have dollars. We could attack these things with dollars. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. You go to other countries that have different medical systems. I mean, it's a very disturbing situation to realize that there should be a spreading of love, and there's not a spreading of love. We're in the world of the lizard brain, of territory, of get all you can, of hoarding, of getting all this money, and then God knows what they do with it. But it's not fair, and it should change, and hopefully we'll get that.
We learned that Reagan, he kind of brought astrology and that stuff into the mainstream a little bit because he was known for having his own personal astrology.
Yeah. Joan Dixon? I got her book up here. Ask Joan. Yeah. It's yeah, I met her. Okay. And
Talk a little bit about that.
About her?
And Reagan, how he was known for.
Well, Nancy was known for that. I mean, yeah, he was known for it too, but I mean, my take on Ronald Reagan was that you had to take a good look at his wife. I mean, I think the man had a lot of strengths of his own. I mean, I think he was definitely a strong man with his own strong. I mean, he was the head of a couple of big unions. He ran California, had a certain philosophy. But the reason that Joan, what is her last name? Anyway, she was from a very wealthy family. I mean, this is a woman in San Francisco who is not Grandma Harris, who lived in a very humble way and was the sweet old lady on the block who was New Age, and we had all this Edgar Cayce stuff. Joan was a very sophisticated woman, tremendously sophisticated, and she was able to deal with Nancy Reagan in a way that very few people could, because Nancy Reagan was also very wealthy. During the Depression, her father, for graduating from high school, gave her a car, a convertible. I'm trying to remember. I don't know the make. He gave her a convertible. I think it was a Chevy convertible or Mercury convertible. Anyway, in a time when other people weren't eating, that people were struggling, and the Dust Bowl was blowing, and the Okies were coming here, and not Nancy Reagan. Nancy, I don't know what her maiden name was, but Nancy Reagan got a brand new car, which was convertible. So, and the same thing with Joan in San Francisco. She was a tremendously sophisticated woman. I guess, I met her at a convention. We got very tight for a while, and I went to a couple of seminars with her. Very wonderful. But the gossip about her was that she's an excellent astrologer, but she was the only astrologer who could deal with Nancy Reagan in a way that was acceptable to Nancy, because they were both sophisticated, they had the same background, they could talk about the same designer dresses, they could talk about all these fashions. So Nancy had a good fit with her. And she also happened to be an extraordinarily good astrologer. I mean, And a lot of people say, she's a rich girl, she's spoiled. I mean, that doesn't, she made good calls. She made, and she was involved with, when the computers first started working, she was one of the first to get involved with the computer age and having, computer charts. It wasn't until the computer came that we all had to go and you have to use all these books, and you have to get the time. You spend a lot of time writing the chart out longhand. And the slightest mistake, you'd screw things up, give a person the wrong moon or something. But Nancy and Joan had a good relationship, and Joan was very much involved with, in fact, if you wanted, I could find that book if you wanted to put that in a shot here. I don't know if that interests you or not. Okay. But I thought she was a very good astrologer. She was not what we'd call like Rob Hand and some of the big names in astrology now. She was a good working astrologer. She had a good clientele. She serviced their needs. They came back repeatedly for readings. That's a good astrologer. If you're someone that you have repeat people coming to you and they trust whatever you're saying to incorporate it in their life experience, you're a good astrologer. This is, the proof is in the pudding. And she had a good following, and Nancy Reagan was one of them. And, they would do a lot of astrology where, you want to be sworn in at the right moment because then the planetary structure will be such, and this is what's called electional astrology, not with the election, but, you elect to start a project at a certain time. You want Mars trining Mercury, or you want Saturn trining Neptune, or you want you want all the planets to be at that time in the fourth house, or whatever. So they would pick times for some of these things to happen. Ronald Reagan was really sworn in before the ceremony because it was supposed to be better to be sworn in at a certain time in the night, as I recall. I mean, don't hold me strictly to this, but I do know he was sworn in twice. And the first time was through, Joan made this call that this was the best time. And of course, Joan worried and in a way, I don't know if she predicted, but she said it was a very difficult time when Reagan got shot. And they poo-pooed it to the public, but it was a difficult Pluto transit, and he nearly died. I mean, it's been just that far from his heart. And that really made Nancy even more fanatical because Joan had made this warning about this particular time. And so then all kinds of things, the State Department, everyone was very upset because, they had this very powerful woman married to the president who was plugged in and her advisor was an astrologer, Well, I don't know. The concept of struggling with astrology is very old. There are, countless kings that have had astrologers, and, it's just something, if it's been going on that long, there must be something to it,
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think if Obama, how do you think that people would handle it if Obama had an astrologer?
I don't know what they would say about Obama having an astrologer. I guess it wouldn't be any crazier than Reverend Wright, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, God damn America, I mean, I don't think it gets crazier than that. But I would say this, that Fox TV would be all over it in a minute, and it would create a terrible uproar, and we have to see what, if we see in 4 years that he's done amazing things, and it came at the end that he did amazing things. But by the way, these projects were started under some kind of astrological consultation. It would be a lot more difficult to deal with. A lot of this stuff with Nancy and her astrologer didn't really come out until after. Yeah, but there's a book about where her astrologer wrote this book, Joan.
So do you think that she was definitely trying to keep it hidden while her husband was the president?
Yeah, I think they were trying to keep a lid on it, and definitely everyone close to Reagan wanted to keep a lid on it. I mean, who wants to say the President of the United States' wife is bringing an astrologer in to decide when the state meeting should happen and whether it's a good time to go to Russia for a trip? Not going that week, man. Mercury's retrograde. Forget it. That makes it kind of difficult for other people who are non-believers to what kind of craziness are we dealing with here?
Let's see, yes.
Oh, let's talk about the thing you encountered with the Orange County Tarot.
Oh yeah, we wanted to film one of the Orange County Tarot meetings, and the leader said that probably wasn't a good idea since many of the members aren't out of the closet, and we were just curious
With
if
their New Age beliefs.
they weren't. Yeah, have you had any issues with that, or personally, or just people not wanting to be open about their beliefs because the people will judge them?
I respect that. I respect that they want to do that. It is, especially in Orange County. I think Orange County is a place that's kind of like California's Bible Belt in a way, and you've got several conservative religious colleges down there, and a lot of the very strong. We made ourselves rich, and we are here because of this, and to then go around and say, well, yeah, I belong to a group of people that study the Tarot together. I can respect that. It's not something that I don't think you'd have that trouble here in Los Angeles, because we're all in the film business, and the film business is full of how did someone get so lucky, and numerology. I changed one letter and a new count for my name, and now I got famous, and all of this. But I think that even in LA, there's a ton of money that comes into LA from other corporations in the financial area, and some of the oil companies are here and have a great presence. I think anywhere where you have a large, kind of very aggressive corporate structure, and in Orange County, it's really a religious structure down there, and I could honor that. It's very funny though that in Orange County, where you have that going on, there's also this temple of the goddess, and they do all kinds of things down there. And they won't let men in, and I think it's a good idea that they've got this area which is completely feminine. And you might want to interview some of the people down there at the Temple of the Goddess, because they are very strong believers of their point of view, and what it means that if you talk about the rising of the patriarchy and what that did to the concept of the feminine. The feminine ruled for a while, now the masculine is going to rule, and then the feminine is rising its head again. I mean, if you go back 100 years, women did not have the vote. There was a lot of things going on. Jim Crow was still here. We get so caught up, we don't realize the progress that we've made in the last 70 years in terms of at least legalizing things. It takes a while before it. So I would say this. I would say I understand what they're talking about. It's just like I'm in a Masonic lodge, and we don't publish who's all in our lodge. That's no one's business but ours, and you just don't do that. And so no one can find out who's in our lodge unless they want to reveal it to you. We don't have some big list that's published, that's released, that these people are all Masons. I mean, we don't have a little dictionary where you can go. We don't know. We have to, call into a guy to get each other's phone numbers. That's not published in any way. Mm-hmm. So as a Mason who's involved in, protecting mysteries is a very big deal. And I understand that they're protecting some kind of mystery that they have. I guess they're also afraid of, as you recall, social stigma of some kind. Yeah.
Have you dealt with any of that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's really bad when you go to New York. I remember I first became a palmist, and I had a business card that said palmist. I wasn't really fully into astrology at that time. I was still working for Tomorrow Rand as a card reader and a palmist. And I was running around, and I got laughed at so bad in New York. I mean, it was really like, God, you are a moron. How can you possibly think the way you think? And the other is that, people would say, I'm an astrologer. Yeah, but what do you really do? I mean, what do you really do? Well, I don't know. I give readings. I go to parties and amuse people. That's what I do. I write books about it. It's kind of a little industry here. No, what do you really do? It's like, and then at times I get very tired of it. In the end of the 90s, I thought I was going to become a healer, and I was wanting to go into holistic healing, but I wasn't able to get away. I had an accident. It's a long story. But you still, I don't reveal instantly to people ask me what I do, that I announce, that especially if they're business people. I kind of let it come out that I'm very interested in the metaphysics, and I'm very interested in this higher spirituality, and let that seep in. I mean, I think more people ask me what I do now. I basically say that I'm involved in spiritual things, and then I reveal that I'm an astrologer. And it's very, like even among the Masons, I'm a Mason, and I'm very slow to reveal to some of my brother Masons exactly, what I do as an astrologer. And it's very easy in one way, until recently, to say, well, I'm in the entertainment business. And they go, oh, okay. And until recently, I could say that with a certain amount of authenticity, because I could organize parties if you wouldn't. I mean, in other words, that Rolodex over there is full of a whole bunch of people that could entertain you at a party in a metaphysical way, and also a not metaphysical way. I mean, if you needed someone to bring in a crap table so you could have a gambling party, I have connections. I could do that. Also, I performed there. I mean, I dress up in these funny costumes. You go to my website, and so I would go to these parties. But even at these parties, people, say, "What do you really do?" I said, "Well, this basically party business is what I really do." And in my lifetime, I've seen some pretty big parties. One of the biggest ones was thrown by Ferrari back in 1980 something. What a party in Bel Air they had. And I worked for Time Life Books and different. There was a time when I was a giveaway at a department store. If you buy this this perfume, you can either get an umbrella or you can go see the psychic for a reading. So I've been through the whole thing, but this has kind of collapsed, and I'm also trying to get more mainstream. Instead of saying I'm in the entertainment business, I'm now into spirituality. I used to be in the party entertainment business, so I'm trying to work in a way of doing it that's more authentic than,
Right.
If you'd asked me this question in the 90s, well, I'm basically my first approach would be I'm in the entertainment business. I'm in party entertainment. But in party entertainment, there's an aspect of the metaphysical and fortune telling. But really, I also practice serious work in this as well as that, and that would be the transition. And that's the transition you'll see on my website. On one hand, how can you be not good if you've got someone that's making millions of dollars, and that wife is a trophy wife, and she knows every cost of everything, every dress, everything. She's going to have a perfect party. This woman is bright. She's competitive as hell. And you're sitting down with her and you're chatting her up, and she asks you back to do it again. You have to know what you're talking about. You can't just go in there and blab. There's here's a story. I had a dentist call me up in Orange County on some day when everyone was having a party, and I was busy. I had a party. He says, "Oh, could anyone to come down and read our cards and do something?" I said, "Well, I met this one woman, and I'll give her a call." So this woman went down and did the party. And the day after the party, the guy calls me up and says, "Spencer, that was the worst thing you ever did. I want you to pay me my money back. I paid that girl." I go, "What happened?" He says, "Well, she started talking to these people about your husband's not being faithful, and there's going to be a disaster in your family. You got a sick kid." So I call the girl up and say, "Well, what are you?" She says, "Oh, I have to be true to myself. I can't go down there and just be." I said, "You're an entertainer. You're going down there to give them an entertaining concept. You talk to them about that if they want to come to your house. You don't sit in." So anyway, I never used her again either. But that is an example of the problem. If you can, the people I know who work these big parties are all very tuned in people, and they know how to deal with people, and they also have a cosmic core. I don't know any of the people who are working these big league parties that don't have a good inner cosmic consciousness. I can't say the same about magicians, you know. They're a completely different breed of animal. I mean, they're there. Some of them have been very inarticulate and screwed up since they were young, and they have learned magic, and they're very good at it. I mean, the guys that do, you cannot believe what they do, but they don't necessarily have a spiritual core. They don't necessarily want to talk to you about your soul, and they don't necessarily talk to you about your spiritual growth, or is there enough love in your life. They're there to amaze you by pulling a coin out of your ear, or saying, pick this card, and, oh my God, you know, pull it over there, and then, you know, you've seen these close-ups, and they're great. Go to the Magic Castle, they're great. No spiritual core there. In fact, a lot of them are very cynical and critical. So there's something to be said about being a party psychic. I mean, I know a woman, now she's in Sedona. I could not believe, you know, how she was plugged in. I mean, you know, she was talking to me about Liz before, you know, my friends who died because of the snake. I said, you know, I got this friend, she's dying of cancer. She says, well, what about the snake? I go, all right, Kira, how did you pick that up? I don't know. I just thought snake, you know, and you know, and this woman is, she comes into town and she's got a very, you know, she's got a real carriage tread. She has, you know, she's a very, it helps being a woman too, to talk to these women. She's very good, and she has a spiritual core. She's not there trying to, you know, just do magic. She's there trying to help in some way. So I think there's something about the business is good. There also is the business of trying to sell you expensive readings and all of that, which I'm very suspicious of. But on the other hand, I think that a lot of the New Age people are very authentic. We're not Jimmy Swaggarts, you know, I hope. There are those people, but that's, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the people that I know aren't that way, you know.
Do you feel like the media kind of tries to pick the most sensational ones and kind of discredits the movement?
Well, I think so. You know, look, the media wants a good story. The media wants a good thing that's like, and, you know, and they cheat all the time. You know, like they'll tell you something, and we're coming right back. You're gonna see 5 commercials later, they still haven't told you what you want to know about, or new cancer affects women. News at 11. Well, why can't you tell it at 6:30? No, it's going to be at 11. You're going to learn about women with cancer. The media is something that has become. We used to have 2 kinds of media. We used to have the tabloid media, and then we had the real media. Well, the tabloid and the real media have kind of been brought together. And then now that we've got the internet and printed media is really slowly atrophying, to get really objective reporting is very difficult. Everyone wants to scream headlines of their point of view. And television stations want to, you know, have people there so they'll watch the commercials. So they do that. And when I was involved with a lot of media, which I haven't done in years now, but I was very active up through 2000, which means that from 1980, then I would be on television from time to time. All they wanted to talk about was, well, what about Princess Diana and the Queen? Is there really a problem there, or what's really going on with Tom Cruise? Is he really, you know, involved in these various things, and all of these, is Pamela Anderson really going to get married again? Well, I care about these things. And I think that's where you find the point. Now, one of the women that I was very tight with, Karen Christian, who unfortunately died of ovarian cancer, but she was incredible. She came out of Mexico. She came out of Mexico City. She was from Texas, but her family moved to Mexico City. Her father was something, I don't know. So she spoke Spanish and English fluently, had a memory. If you told her your birth date, I don't know how she had a memory of that. I think she's very weak, but a memory for birth dates. And she was an incredible one who would do this. I mean, she was on the Lisa show and all these shows because you could say, oh, well, Princess Diane, she's a Cancer, which she is, but I mean, that's one of the few that I remember. So the media likes to somehow deal with some kind of controversy, and or is, you know, what's going to happen now. You're going to see a lot more of 2012 because it's bubbling up under the surface. When it gets to the surface, you're going to see a lot of talking heads from the New Age group talking about what they think it is, and you're going to see a lot of American Indians talking about it because part of it is American Indian culture as well. These calendars. So.
Could you talk just a little bit about what belief do you know in Penn and Teller and kind of your take on both those?
Well, I think what the bleep do we know, I think that should be shown in every school, every high school, everywhere. I think it should be like something like it's as big a required reading as your physics text, you know, because it really tries to go to the core of perception, the core of what we know about physics, and the fact that what we now know because of quantum physics reveals that the world is much more in a greater state of flux than we ever began to imagine, and that the way that we come to perceive and the way we come to conform and all of these things, I think it was, you know, what the belief we know, I think it was one of the great metaphysical films based upon physics. You know, I mean, they were talking physics there, and talking about vibrations and color and perception, and I really like that. Now, the debunkers, Penn and Teller, they love to debunk. I mean, they will, they have routines they go through where they would make fun of New Age people, and you have to laugh at it, but you have to also say, God, guys, you know, you're really proving your own, you know, your own strangeness here. The only people I respect at that at all, if you're like Kurt Vonnegut, where you don't know, but you're a humanist, you don't believe a soul. Kurt Vonnegut did not believe in having a soul. He just believed he came back to the atoms. He had no concept of me, the higher frequency, or the Big Bang. He wasn't into that, and I respected that. So Kurt Vonnegut, in a way, if Penn and Teller could be like Kurt Vonnegut, that would be helpful. But they're not putting anything out there that's positive. They're just feeding on making fun of a group of people, some of whom need to be teased or made fun of. The Amazing Randy is another story. The Amazing Randy destroyed one of my friends in astrology because he came to town. He was going to test everybody, and as soon as you knew what was going on, I walked out of the room because I knew that this was not going to be a fair shake. And this one friend of mine, whose life was really nearly ruined because he was made a fool of on national TV. They took 12 people, and he actually submitted that he could tell each one of their signs by looking at them. This is born to fail, you know, and yet he did it. And of course he failed. And of course then, you know, Amazing Randy goes, see how stupid they are, these people? Well, if you really understand astrology and you're into a deeper concept, like a Jungian concept, Carl Jung was really in the intuitive branch of psychotherapy. There are reasons for looking at planetary structures and looking at signs, but if you first of all, you can't do that. I mean, I didn't even know if Kiram, who pulled out the snake concept out of Liz, I mean, she had other concepts, but I just think that the Amazing Randy, like, here's the thing, I don't know what I think about Nostradamus. Amazing Randy took on Nostradamus, a whole book on debunking Nostradamus, and you're going to hear more and more Nostradamus stories. I don't know what I think about Nostradamus. One thing, Nostradamus was no psychic till he fell off his roof and hit his head, and had this very severe change in his consciousness. Then he became quite an unusually accurate astrologer, and was quite an interesting character. All of these long quatrains, if you ever tried to read him in a long, you know, it's like trying to read the Four Zoas of William Blake. I mean, this is very heavy stuff. And maybe Hitler is really Himmler and Hitler, and I don't know. The Amazing Randy went through and pretty much debunked all of that. But the Amazing Randy also backed out of a couple of severe tests with bigger league astrologers who now have computers, and they're more able to use their art with a really well-based concept of where the planets are and what the cycles are. You don't hear so much about him debunking that as much as he's debunking bad psychics, basically. And it's hard, this guy. He's a very lovable guy. I mean, you'll sit down and lunch with him, and he's got this big white beard. He looks like Santa Claus, except he's thin. And then he says, watch this, it's all a trick. And he will, melt the spoon. He did a thing on Johnny Carson that was very interesting, because there was, and I kind of believed that he did a good job there, on these psychic surgeons. Have you heard about these guys? You go to the Philippines, and they're going to their hand's going to enter your stomach, and they're going to pull something out of your body, and there will be no scar or anything, but they have this, and so the amazing Randy, they brought this beautiful model on, and she was, had a bikini on, so he could get into her stomach. And so here the amazing Randy is pushing his little hand in, and then he pulls out these guts of a chicken, and this was your problem, and obviously it looked like he had done this amazing thing, and it's all a sleight of hand. And I think that was the service, because I think that, and the whole psychic healing thing died because of that, or at least I haven't heard of people really promoting that. That was a big bubble that really happened. A lot of people went to the Philippines and went through a lot. So the amazing Randy did good work there, I think. And I think that in that format, he's very good. I don't appreciate what he's doing, or has tried to do at astrology. I think that he does put a critical aura into looking at these things. I think in a way that he's a zealot on the other side. I mean, just so you have zealots, New Age zealots, he's a zealot from the other side, and I respect him as a zealot, and I respect him for what he did to the psychic surgery people, and the kind of way he looked at Nostradamus. I read the book on Nostradamus, and I had to agree that I thought that some of the comments he made about Nostradamus and the worship of Nostradamus was very accurate. However, Nostradamus did make some very public decisions, public things about how the king of France would die by having a splinter pierce his eye. What's that all about? And actually, he was in some kind of a jousting kind of thing, and he actually died of a splinter in his eye. So, I mean, he did do things that were accurate. Whether or not we can say he predicted the end of the world, or whether or not he really predicted the Second World War, the invention of submarines and spaceships, I don't know. In fact, it bores me to worry about that stuff. But some people get carried away with it, and to me, it's another, Nostradamus is another apocalyptic book, Do you love in your heart? Do you worry about your neighbors? Are you worried about world peace? These are issues. I mean, let's not get carried away with Nostradamus is going to predict all this stuff. So I have a very mixed feeling about the amazing Randy. I met him twice, and he's certainly, when you meet him, very engaging. It's just when you start to talk about how you really feel about something that he kind of changes from being grandpa who melt a spoon into this kind of very aggressive, negative character. But I think he did do some good and some not so good,
Right.
Yeah.
Who would you consider like kind of the main kind of leaders of the New Age movement, or people that have, like, I know Sterling Fane might be one that really brought a lot of attention to it, but are there certain people that you consider the leaders?
It's so diversified. I think the best, one of the best New Age ministers